You ever open up the back of an antique pocket watch?
Oh, yeah. It is completely mesmerizing.
Right. You see all those like tiny golden gears, the hair springs, little ruby bearings, and everything is in this perfect, relentless order. I mean, every piece exists only to turn the piece next to it.
There is a deep comfort in that kind of mechanical predictability. We like things to be categorized, to move exactly as they're designed to move within a closed system.
But if just one grain of sand, like one tiny little speck of dust gets into those gears, the whole incredibly expensive mechanism it grinds to a halt, or it shatters entirely.
Yeah, the tension is real.
And in July of 1805, St. Petersburg high society was basically that delicately balanced pocket watch. And this guy, man named Pierre Bezukhov, he was the grain of sand.
That is a perfect way to put it. We are stepping into a human ecosystem so tightly wound and, so heavily predicated on everyone playing their exact designated part that the slightest deviation threatens to tear the social fabric apart.
So if you are listening to this, you are likely the kind of person who is always looking to understand the mechanics of human behavior. And you have probably looked at a certain massive, intimidating book sitting on a shelf, Leo Tolstoy's War and Peace, and thought about conquering it.
Oh, absolutely. The sheer scale of it keeps people away. I mean, hundreds of characters, complex historical battles, pages upon pages of, philosophical tangents.
Right. The irony of its status as the pinnacle of literature is that it acts as a massive barrier to entry. It feels monumental, like a textbook of human history or something, which masks the fact that at its core, it is a surgical dissection of incredibly recognizable human flaws.
Exactly. It's basically a reality show about the 19th century elite, just written with unparalleled genius.
So our mission today is to act as your guides through the very beginning of this world. We are zooming in exclusively on the opening chapters of Book 1. We're going to decode the complex social web of the Russian elite and explore how influence is traded, how, public masks hide private despair.
And how the stifling rules of high society push its members toward reckless, chaotic rebellion. It's so fascinating.
It really is. So to understand the pressures these people are under, we have to lock in on this specific time and place, which is July 1805.
Yes, the physical setting is St. Petersburg, the imperial capital of Russia. And this is a city built by Peter the Great to be a window to the West, basically designed to rival the grandeur of Paris or Vienna.
But beyond the borders of this city, the Napoleonic Wars are raging across Europe. Like Napoleon Bonaparte has crowned himself emperor and is redrawing the map of the continent through sheer military force.
Right. The old world order of hereditary monarchs is trembling. Everything they know is at risk.
Yet inside the elite drawing room of Anna Pavlovna's share, where our story actually begins, the war isn't a bloody reality with casualty lists and mud and artillery. It is just the flavor of the month for high society gossip.
Yeah, it is literally a topic to be debated over tea and imported French wine. We are starting right at the center of the social universe, which is essential because we have to understand the rigid rules of this game before we can appreciate the magnitude of the characters who break them.
Absolutely. So, Anna Pavlovna is a 40-year-old maid of honor and a confidant to the Dowager Empress.
And if you are hearing maid of honor and picturing a bridesmaid, we need to correct that immediately.
Yeah, this is not a ceremonial role holding a bouquet, right?
Far from it. A maid of honor in the Russian imperial court was a highly coveted, deeply political position. It meant proximity to absolute power. Anna Pavlovna has the ear of the empress, so she is a massive social gatekeeper.
And her particular brand of influence is built on a very specific, carefully cultivated persona. I mean, she has made enthusiasm her social vocation.
Yes, she is expected to be animated, impulsive, and fiercely patriotic, even when she's exhausted or ill. It's a full-time performance.
And on this particular evening, she is actually sick. She is hosting this elite gathering while suffering from a cough. But she doesn't just call it a cough. She says she has la grippe.
Oh, I love this part. Tolstoy slips in this fantastic little detail, noting that la grippe was a trendy new French word in St. Petersburg at the time, used only by the absolute upper crust.
It's such a brilliant sociological detail. I mean, it is the 19th century equivalent of adopting a highly specialized, esoteric piece of jargon just to signal your in-group status.
Exactly. It's like using tech buzzwords at a startup pitch. She sends out these invitations written entirely in French, delivered by a footman in scarlet livery. The invitations essentially say, if you have nothing better to do, Count, And if the prospect of spending an evening with a poor invalid is not too terrible, I shall be very charmed to see you.
The classic aristocratic humble brag. She knows perfectly well no one is going to turn down an invitation to her drawing room.
No one in their right mind. And the first person to arrive and navigate this performance is Prince Vasily Kuragin. He walks in wearing a heavily embroidered court uniform, knee breeches, shoes, and, actual stars on his breast.
Right, and he has a bald, scented, shining head and this totally serene expression.
He is the physical embodiment of the Russian establishment. He has survived and thrived in the court by mastering the art of the placid exterior.
And Anna Pavlovna greets this monument of calm with a fierce, almost violent political monologue. She immediately attacks Napoleon, calling him the Antichrist.
Yeah, she is ranting about how Genoa and Lucca, these historic Italian republics, have just been swallowed up as private family estates for the Bonaparte family.
She tells Vasily, if you try to defend the horrors perpetrated by that Antichrist, you are no longer my friend. And Vasily he doesn't flinch.
Not at all. He just smiles his perpetual courtly smile, kisses her hand, and calmly remarks on what a virulent attack she has just delivered. He is completely unfazed by her intensity.
Right, and he is unfazed because he understands the mechanics of the room. He knows her outrage is just a performance required by her brand.
Yeah, and Tolstoy gives us this striking metaphor for how Anna Pavlovna operates this drawing room. He compares her to a foreman at a spinning mill.
Oh, I love that analogy.
It's so good. When the foreman walks the floor and sees a spindle that is stopped or one that is creaking and making too much noise, he steps in, adjusts the machinery, and sets it back into proper rhythmic motion.
He is constantly scanning the room for awkward silences or overly loud debates, like a modern-day event planner or a political whip who controls the room's energy. But wait, why does she even bother feigning this intense enthusiasm if everyone, like the cynical Prince Vasily, knew she's faking it? I mean, isn't the whole room just play acting?
They are, but the play acting is the social contract. If you don't play the game, you threaten the entire structure. When a conversation flags, she glides over, drops a carefully calculated comment, and the machine starts humming again. She has to keep the illusion alive.
She even treats her special guests, a French royalist named the Vicomte and an Italian abbé, like delicacies. Tolstoy says she serves them up to her attendees like choice pieces of roast beef.
That phrasing is intentional. The guests are commodities. They are literally consumed by the society for entertainment and political validation.
But there is a profound, almost absurd irony operating beneath the surface of this entire gathering. Like, these Russian elites are terrified of France, right?
Oh, terrified. They are politically outraged by the French emperor. They are preparing to send their sons to bleed on battlefields against the French army.
And yet, they're speaking French. They think in French. Their invitations are written in French. The very atmosphere of the room is draped in French culture.
This is the legacy of Peter the Great's aggressive westernization of Russia a century earlier, compounded by the European aristocratic belief that French was a language of diplomacy, intellect, and civilization.
So Russian was basically viewed by this specific elite class as the language of the peasants, of the serfs, the muddy estates they owned but rarely visited.
Exactly. Tolstoy emphasizes this immediately by having Prince Vasily speak in that refined French in which our grandfathers not only spoke but thought. They are culturally colonized by the very nation they are preparing to destroy.
It's wild. Let's pause on the political conversation they're having in this French-speaking Russian drawing room because it sets the stakes for the entire society, and the gossip centers around the execution of the Duc d'Enghien.
Right, and for those listening, we are looking at this strictly through the lens of the historical reality Tolstoy is portraying. We are exploring why these specific characters are reacting the way they do without taking a modern stance on the politics ourselves.
Exactly. Impartial reporting here. So, in the context of 1805 Europe, the Duc d'Enghien was a member of the Bourbon family, the deposed French royal line. Napoleon had him seized across international borders and executed after a hasty military trial, suspecting him of plotting a royalist rebellion.
And for the aristocrats in Anna Pavlovna's room, this is not just a political maneuver, it is an existential terror.
Right, because if the divine right of kings doesn't protect a royal duke from being put before a firing squad by a guy who used to be a mere artillery officer, then nothing protects the Russian aristocracy either.
Precisely. The Vicomte de Marmar, who is sitting in the room, is a genuine French émigré who fled the revolution. He represents the old, dying regime.
And he argues that the sovereigns of Europe brought this on themselves by betraying the Bourbons and sending ambassadors to flatter Napoleon, who they view as a usurper.
But while the room nods along to this high-minded geopolitical outrage, there is a secondary shadow economy running beneath the surface. The political chatter is just the polite noise the machine makes. The actual output of the machine is the trading of power and favors.
Which brings us back to Prince Vasily. He did not put on his scented court uniform and his breast stars just to hear Anna Pavlovna rant about Genoa. He has a very specific objective. He wants to secure a diplomatic post in Vienna for his son.
And Vienna is not just any posting in 1805. It is the strategic heart of the European coalition against Napoleon. To be the first secretary there is a position of immense influence.
But Vasily has heard a rumor that the Dowager Empress prefers a man named Baron Funke for the role. And just watch how Vasily operates here. He doesn't demand answers. He asks about Baron Funke with studied carelessness, as if the thought just drifted into his mind.
It's such a calculated move, and Anna Pavlovna confirms the rumor, and the moment she invokes the Empress, her face assumes an expression of profound, sincere devotion. She actually rebukes Vasily for even questioning the Empress's judgment.
It is a delicate dance of power. Anna Pavlovna has to assert her proximity to the Empress, but she also needs to maintain her alliance with Vasily. So, to soften the blow of denying him the information he wants, she pivots the conversation to his children.
Yeah, she praises his daughter, Helene, who is universally considered a breathtaking beauty. But then she brings up his youngest son, Anatole. And for a brief second, the courtly mask slips from Vasily's face.
He drops the serene smile. When Anna Pavlovna asks why children are born to men like him, Vasily flatly states that his children are the bane of his life. He literally calls them his cross to bear.
Which is so cold. He says he spent a fortune on their education, and they both turned out to be fools. His eldest, Hippolyte, is a quiet fool, which is manageable, but Anatole is an active fool.
And Anatole is costing his father 40,000 rubles a year in debts and reckless living.
Yeah.
I mean, 40,000 rubles. If you are hearing that number and trying to contextualize it, you have to understand the Russian serf economy.
Oh, absolutely. 40,000 rubles is a staggering, almost incomprehensible sum of money. It represents the labor and lives of thousands of serfs working massive agricultural estates.
Entire villages exist in poverty simply to generate the capital that Anatole Kuragin is blowing on gambling, wine, and debauchery in St. Petersburg. Yeah. So Vasily isn't just annoyed by a rebellious teenager. He is looking at a massive, unsustainable liability on his balance sheet.
Exactly. So Anna Pavlovna, playing the role of the ultimate societal fixer, offers a solution. She suggests marrying off Anatole to Princess Mary Bolkonskaya. She is a very wealthy, highly isolated heiress who lives deep in the country with her tyrannical, eccentric father.
And Vasily's reaction is instantaneous. He grabs Anna's hand, kisses it, and says, "Arrange that affair for me, and I shall always be your most devoted slave."
Notice the complete absence of any discussion regarding affection, compatibility, or the young woman's well-being. Vasily simply says, she is rich and of good family, and that's all I want.
It's basically a corporate merger. He needs to offload toxic debt, and he intends to use this isolated heiress as the bailout fund. Vasily navigates this room like a venture capitalist calculating the return on investment for every conversation.
He really does. He has a limited amount of social capital, and he's extremely careful about where he deploys it, which perfectly explains the tension in the very next interaction.
Right, because Vasily tries to leave the party early to attend another function, but he is ambushed in the anteroom by an elderly lady, Princess Drubetskaya.
She had been sitting quietly, almost invisibly, next to an irrelevant aunt all evening. But she was operating with a single-minded predatory focus. She was waiting to corner Prince Vasily alone.
So Princess Drubetskaya is an impoverished noblewoman. She belongs to the elite class by blood, but she has lost the financial and political connections to sustain her position. She needs Vasily to use his influence with the emperor to get her only son, Boris, transferred into the imperial guards.
And the negotiation tactics she deploys are a masterclass in asymmetrical warfare. She has no money and no current power, so she relies entirely on emotional leverage and the threat of social discomfort. She physically grabs his arm so he cannot walk away.
Yeah, she uses flattery, tears, and a deeply weaponized sense of guilt. But wait, I'm struggling with this narrative of Vasily as the ultimate cold calculator, while Drubetskaya is just a desperate mother. Look at her actions. She's weeping. She's bringing up his dead father. She's physically blocking his exit. She's playing the exact same transactional game he is, just using maternal desperation as her currency instead of political titles. Isn't she just as calculated and ruthless?
She absolutely is, but the distinction lies in the margin for error. Vasily operates from a fortress of established wealth and status, so his coldness is the luxury of the powerful. Drubetskaya is operating on the edge of a cliff.
Right. If she fails to secure this position for her son, her family line faces irrelevance and poverty.
Exactly. Tolstoy explicitly gives us Vasily's internal calculation.
Yeah.
Vasily knows that influence in society is a finite capital that must be strictly economized. If he uses his political ships to ask the emperor for a favor for Drubetskaya's son, he cannot ask for a favor for himself later.
He literally have a mental ledger of favors, and her request puts him in the red. He tries to brush her off. He tells her to ask someone else, but she brings out the heavy artillery. She reminds him that her father helped launch Vasily's career years ago. She says, "I have never yet asked you for anything, and I never will again."
And Vasily realizes something crucial about her psychology in that moment. He recognizes that she is the type of mother who will not stop. If he refuses, she will pester him day after day. She will corner him in public. She might even make a huge scene.
It is the threat of sustained, exhausting annoyance that breaks him. He calculates that it is cheaper to just grant the favor than to fight a war of attrition with her, so he promises to make the request to the emperor.
And the psychological shift that happens the second she gets his promise is chilling. The tears vanish instantly. Tolstoy writes that her face immediately resumes its former cold, artificial expression.
The desperate mother routine just evaporates because the transaction is complete. She walks back into the party, pretends to listen to an anecdote, and just waits for the socially acceptable window of time to pass before she can leave.
It is a stunning depiction of the dual reality these characters inhabit. The public mask is completely divorced from the private objective. We see this duality highlighted even further by Vasily's children who are present at the party.
Oh, yeah. Consider his daughter, Helene. She is described as breathtakingly beautiful, carrying the glamour of a ballroom wherever she goes, but she is entirely silent throughout the evening. She offers an unchanging, radiant smile, adjusts her diamond necklace, and allows the room to admire her classically molded shoulders.
She doesn't need to speak because her currency is aesthetic perfection. She fulfills her role simply by existing as an object of high status.
And then contrast her with her brother, Hippolyte. Tolstoy notes that Hippolyte looks remarkably like his beautiful sister, but his features are dulled by imbecility. He is exceedingly ugly and famously foolish. Yet he carries himself with a sullen, unshakable self-confidence.
Hippolyte is the ultimate proof that extreme privilege protects you from your own incompetence. Later in the evening, when a political conversation gets slightly too heated, Hippolyte suddenly demands everyone's attention to tell a story in Russian.
Right, and remember, speaking Russian here is already a huge faux pas, and he speaks it poorly, with a French accent. He proceeds to tell a completely incomprehensible anecdote about a stingy lady and a maid whose hat blows off in the wind. And the punchline makes absolutely no sense.
None at all. He even bursts out laughing before he finishes the story, while the rest of the room just stares in confusion. But because of who his father is, the room accommodates him. Anna Pavlovna smiles, and the guests silently agree to view this bizarre interruption as a stroke of social tact designed to diffuse the tension.
The machinery simply absorbs his foolishness and keeps running. Because the tension he was trying to diffuse was caused by the introduction of the grain of sand into the clockwork. Into this perfectly curated, transactional, heavily monitored environment walk two men who absolutely do not fit the mold. They are the disruptors.
Yes, the primary disruptor is Pierre Bezukhov. Everything about Pierre is an affront to the aesthetic and behavioral codes of Anna Pavlovna's drawing room. He is heavily built, stout, and wears spectacles. He is dressed in a brown coat and light-colored breeches, which totally lacks the sharp formality of the military and court uniforms surrounding him.
His background is just as problematic as his appearance. He has been educated abroad for 10 years, meaning he missed the intensive socialization of the Russian court. And crucially, he is the illegitimate son of Count Bezukhov, a wildly wealthy grandee who is currently lying on his deathbed in Moscow.
Anna Pavlovna is terrified of him from the second he crosses the threshold. He's too large, he spreads his feet too far apart, but most dangerously, he possesses what Tolstoy calls an observant and natural gaze.
Which is so rare there. In a room where every look is calculated and artificial, a natural, inquisitive gaze is deeply destabilizing. It pierces the performance.
It does. And he immediately commits a string of massive social sins. Anna Pavlovna tries to manage him by introducing him to the elderly, irrelevant aunt. The aunt starts giving her standard, memorized speech about the Empress's health.
And Pierre listens for a moment, realizes the conversation is utterly devoid of meaning, murmurs something unintelligible, and physically walks away while she is still talking.
It is a breach of protocol that borders on scandalous. You do not simply walk away from a senior member of the society mid-sentence. Anna Pavlovna rushes in to do damage control and tries to pawn him off on the Italian abbé.
But Pierre traps the abbé in a heavy, intense debate about the European balance of power, and he speaks far too loudly. His intellectual bluntness mirrors his physical awkwardness perfectly.
Now, if you're hearing this and wondering why Pierre hasn't just been escorted out by a footman, you have to look at the invisible shield protecting him. If a poor, unentitled person acted this way, they would be ruined.
Right, so what insulates Pierre?
The prospect of unimaginable wealth. His father, Count Bezukhov, is dying. While Pierre is illegitimate, the emperor could legitimize him and allow him to inherit the massive Bezukhov fortune.
Even Prince Vasily himself is hovering around Pierre, later asking Anna Pavlovna to help educate this bear. The elite society will tolerate a staggering amount of eccentricity, awkwardness, and even rudeness, provided there's a potential pipeline to massive financial resources.
Yeah, money talks. But he tests the limits of that tolerance almost immediately. The polite gossip circles back to the execution of the Duc d'Enghien. The room is uniformly expressing horror at Napoleon's actions.
And Pierre, oblivious to the danger, steps into the center of the room and vocally defends Napoleon.
It's a huge moment. He argues that the execution was a political necessity. He praises Napoleon as a great man who stood above the chaos of the French Revolution, preserving its core ideals, like equality of citizenship, freedom of speech, the destruction of prejudices, while restoring order.
You can practically hear the gears of the pocket watch shattering. Anna Pavlovna literally whispers "Mon Dieu" in terror. Pierre is smiling, this naive, genuine smile, while passionately defending regicide and revolutionary equality to a room full of Russian autocrats who own human beings as property. It is ideological heresy of the highest order.
The Vicomte attempts to put him in his place, arguing that the revolution was nothing but robbery and murder. But Pierre is unrelenting. The atmosphere turns intensely hostile. The shared social contract is breaking down because Pierre refuses to play the role of the polite, agreeable guest.
He is forcing them to confront actual, dangerous ideas instead of safely packaged gossip. He is drowning socially. The whole room is turned against him. And just as the tension reaches a breaking point, our second disruptor steps in to throw him a lifeline, Prince Andrei Bolkonsky.
Yes. Prince Andrew is the polar opposite of Pierre in almost every physical and social respect. He is handsome, with firm, clear-cut features. He walks with a quiet, measured step. He possesses the exact icy, commanding presence that Pierre lacks.
But internally, Andrew is just as alienated from this society as Pierre is. When Andrew walks into the room, it is immediately obvious that he knows everyone and that he finds every single one of them unbearably tedious.
He narrows his eyes. He looks like a man who has been forced to listen to the same terrible song on repeat for years. And the person who seems to bore and irritate him the most is his own wife, Lise.
Lise is known as the Little Princess. She's pregnant, radiant, and universally adored by society. She is the physical manifestation of everything a high society wife is supposed to be.
Tolstoy gives her a highly specific, recurring physical trait, a short upper lip with a delicate dark down on it, which leaves her mouth perpetually half open.
It is described as a unique, charming defect that makes her more beautiful. But Tolstoy uses that lip to signify something deeper, doesn't he? It makes her seem almost animalistic.
Exactly. It highlights her instinctual, unreflective nature. She exists entirely in the present moment of social interaction, much like a small, highly bred animal thrives in a comfortable environment.
So when Andrew steps into the debate, he doesn't necessarily agree with Pierre's radical views, but he uses his immense social capital to protect his friend.
Andrew coolly argues that one must separate the actions of a statesman from the morality of a private individual. He essentially applies a layer of cold Machiavellian logic to the conversation, which shifts the tone from emotional outrage to intellectual detachment.
He cools the room down, neutralizes the threat, and saves Pierre. And once the fire is put out, Andrew signals to Lise that it is time to leave. And Pierre's exit provides one final moment of physical comedy.
Oh, the hat.
Yes, he is so absent-minded and intellectually distracted that instead of picking up his own hat, he grabs a general's plumed three-cornered hat. He stands there vacantly pulling at the feathers until the general has to politely ask for his property back.
Anna Pavlovna must have needed a deeply restorative cup of tea the moment the door closed behind him.
I bet she did. And as the guests filter out into the bright St. Petersburg night, we shift our focus entirely. We are leaving the public, brightly lit stage of the drawing room and going behind closed doors into the private sanctums of these characters. This brings us to the existential trap of what Andrew calls the enchanted circle.
Pierre rides home with Prince Andrew. They enter Andrew's newly decorated, luxurious dining room for supper. And the moment they are alone, the icy, bored mask that Andrew wore at the party shatters.
All of his weary composure just vanishes. His face quivers with nervous, almost manic excitement. He paces the room and delivers a passionate, bitter monologue to Pierre that completely upends the image of his perfect life.
He leans over the table and says, "Never, never marry, my dear fellow. That's my advice. Never marry till you can say to yourself that you've done all you are capable of, and until you have ceased to love the woman of your choice and have seen her plainly as she is, or else you will make a cruel and irrevocable mistake."
It's such a heavy speech. He describes marriage, specifically marriage within this high society framework, as a mechanism that ties you down like a chained convict. He tells Pierre that drawing rooms, gossip, balls, vanity, and triviality constitute an enchanted circle from which he cannot escape.
It is a profound, terrifying look into the psychology of a man who has won a game he despises playing.
Because if you look at Andrew's resume, he has everything.
Yeah.
He has status, wealth, a beautiful and popular wife, and a prestigious military appointment as an aide-de-camp to General Kutuzov.
Right. And let's contextualize that role. An aide-de-camp to the commanding general is not a grunt on the front lines. It is a highly visible, politically crucial role that places him at the nexus of military and state power. He is on the fast track to the highest echelons of Russian leadership.
Yet he feels his soul is rotting. He feels his potential is being suffocated by the endless stream of meaningless conversations about Baron Funk and the Dowager Empress. When Pierre asks him why he is choosing to go to war, why he is actively seeking out a battlefield, Andrew's answer is chilling. He says, "I am going because the life I am leading here does not suit me."
War, for Prince Andrew, has nothing to do with patriotism. It has nothing to do with defeating the Antichrist, as Anna Pavlovna claimed. For Andrew, the impending war with France is an escape hatch.
It is a desperate bid for meaning, consequence, and freedom. He looks at Napoleon not with horror, but with intense, secret jealousy. Napoleon, in Andrew's eyes, is a man who acts on the world, a man who is free to impose his will, while Andrew is trapped discussing party invitations.
But let's look at the collateral damage of Andrew's existential crisis. What about Lise? Earlier in the evening, before they left the party, there is a private moment between them where Lise is practically in tears.
Yeah, she realizes he is leaving her to go to the front. She complains that he treats her with cold disdain and that he is banishing her to the countryside to live with his terrifying, eccentric father while he goes off to find glory. She literally asks him, "What have I done to you?"
It is a tragedy of utterly incompatible realities. Lise is a creature of the social spinning mill. She draws her life force from the admiration of the drawing room. She cannot comprehend Andrew's philosophical despair.
And when she becomes frightened, her physical description changes again. Tolstoy writes that her short upper lip quivers, and her face assumes the timid, deprecating expression of a dog when it rapidly but feebly wags its drooping tail.
That animalistic imagery strips away all her drawing room glamour. It reduces her to a creature experiencing sheer instinctual terror of abandonment.
Right, but Andrew isn't actively malicious toward her. He simply pities her from a vast, unbridgeable distance. He kisses her hand like a stranger. He realizes he chose to marry her because she represented everything society told him he should want, and now he is punishing her for being exactly the superficial creature she was trained to be.
Which is incredibly unfair, but real. Pierre witnesses all this and looks at Andrew with absolute adoration. The dynamic between them is fascinating. Pierre views Andrew as a model of perfection because Andrew possesses the one trait Pierre entirely lacks, which is willpower.
Pierre is mesmerized by Andrew's calm intellect, his extensive reading, and his ability to make definitive choices, even if those choices are destructive.
And Andrew, in return, has a deep fondness for Pierre because Pierre is genuine. Andrew tells him he is the only live man among their deadened social set.
Pierre is a mess. I mean, he lacks tact, he argues too passionately, he makes a fool of himself, but he is undeniably alive. He's not a wound-up automaton like Prince Vasily or a protected idiot like Hippolyte.
But Pierre's vitality is completely undirected. He confesses to Andrew that he has been in St. Petersburg for 3 months trying to choose a career, and he has done absolutely nothing. He is paralyzed.
He doesn't know if he wants to join the army or the diplomatic corps. He is simply drifting, waiting for his dying father's immense fortune to drop into his lap and dictate his future.
Because Pierre lacks internal direction, he is highly susceptible to the gravity of others. He has fallen in with a crowd of young, reckless aristocrats led by Anatole Kuragin.
The very son Prince Vasily was trying to marry off to pay down his debts.
Exactly. Andrew recognizes the danger this poses to Pierre's unformed character. He gives Pierre strict brotherly advice. Stop associating with the Kuragin crowd. Stop the debauchery.
And Pierre completely agrees. He admits that the lifestyle is draining him. He says one's head aches and one spends all one's money. He reveals that Anatole has invited him to a gathering that very night. But under the influence of Andrew's commanding presence, Pierre gives his solemn word of honor that he will not go. He swears he will change his life, starting right now.
It is a beautiful moment of moral resolve, and it lasts precisely as long as the carriage ride back to his lodgings.
This brings us to the final sequence, a descent into chaos that perfectly illustrates the psychological fragility of this society. Pierre leaves Andrew's house and gets into an open cab. It is a bright, cloudless northern summer night in St. Petersburg.
The white nights, where the sun barely sets, it is so light out that it feels like morning, even though it is the middle of the night.
The physical environment mirrors Pierre's internal restlessness. The perpetual daylight makes the idea of going home to sleep feel absurd. As the cab rolls through the empty streets, the rationalization process begins.
It is one of the most brilliant, recognizable depictions of weak character and self-sabotage in literature.
He literally debates himself in the carriage. He knows he gave Andrew his word of honor, but then he counters that thought by reminding himself that he had previously given Anatole his word that he would attend the party, so which promise takes precedence?
And then he broadens the rationalization to an almost nihilistic level. He thinks to himself that all such words of honor are merely conventional things with no definite meaning, especially when you consider that by tomorrow, you might be dead.
The impending war provides the ultimate excuse for immediate gratification. If the world might end tomorrow, what does a promise matter tonight?
It is the 19th century equivalent of telling yourself you are going to start a strict budget on Monday, but on Sunday night you convince yourself that buying a wildly expensive dinner doesn't count because you might get hit by a bus anyway.
Pierre entirely nullifies his own moral agency and redirects the cab to Anatole Kuragin's house. And the environment Pierre walks into is the complete chaotic antithesis of Anna Pavlovna's drawing room.
Oh, the sensory shift in the narrative is jarring. We have spent the entire deep dive in a world smelling of scented bald heads, listening to hushed French whispers about European diplomacy, and watching people carefully adjust their diamond necklaces.
Now, Pierre opens a door and is hit by the smell of spilled wine, sweat, and unbuttoned linen. Men are shouting. And above all the noise, there is the deep, guttural growling of a chained bear.
A live young bear is in the room. A footman is sneaking drinks from the remnants in the guests' glasses. There are 8 or 9 young aristocratic men, officers and heirs, crowding around an open third-story window.
Some of them are pulling the bear by its chain, trying to incite it to attack the others. Anatole Kuragin, the host, is standing in the center of the madness with his fine shirt completely unfastened, shouting for more bottles of wine.
Anatole sees Pierre, immediately grabs him, and forces a glass of wine into his hand. And Pierre, the man who just an hour ago swore on his honor to reform his life, drinks the wine without hesitation.
He drinks glass after glass, smiling merrily at the chaos, completely absorbed by the peer pressure and the intoxicating energy of the room.
The focal point of this madness is a man named Bolkonsky. He is an infantry officer, a man of no great wealth, but of terrifying reputation. He is a notorious gambler, a duelist, and a man who exerts a magnetic, dangerous control over the wealthy young men around him.
He is currently engaged in a bet with an English naval officer named Stevens, and the parameters of this bet are genuinely insane. Dolokhov has wagered that he can drink a full bottle of rum in one continuous unbroken draught without stopping for breath.
But he isn't going to do it sitting at a table. He is going to do it sitting on the outer ledge of an open third-story window.
You have to visualize the architecture to understand the lethality of this stunt. The window ledge slopes downward. It is smooth stone. Dolokhov climbs out, sits on this sloping ledge, and lets his legs hang freely over the empty air.
If he loses his balance for a fraction of a second, if the rum burns his throat and he flinches, he will fall to the pavement below and die instantly.
If you're hearing this and wondering why these highly educated, incredibly wealthy young men are cheering on a stunt with a massive chance of death, You have to look at what they're about to face.
Exactly. We just left a drawing room where the older generation was wringing their hands over Napoleon. These young men are the ones who actually have to face Napoleon's artillery. They are standing on the precipice of a massive, bloody, mechanized conflict.
The rigid, suppressed, highly choreographed rules of their society have offered them no emotional outlet.
So Anatole's party acts as the ultimate release valve. It is a dark, desperate rehearsal for war. And Pierre, the intellectual who is just debating the rights of man, is right in the middle of it, soaking his fine clothes in spilled wine, cheering for a man who's risking his life for a bottle of rum.
When we pull back and look at the entirety of what Tolstoy has established in just these opening chapters, it is a staggering portrait of a society defined by its unresolvable contradictions.
We have a ruling class that is terrified of the French military, yet has allowed themselves to be entirely colonized by French culture and language.
We have individuals like Prince Andrew who possess every marker of societal success, yet are suffocating from existential despair, looking for a war just to feel free.
We have a society that views itself as the height of civilized refinement, debating European treaties and diplomatic appointments, but which ultimately relies on the ruthless, calculated hoarding of influence, as seen with Prince Vasily and Princess Drubetskaya.
And beneath that civilized veneer, the younger generation is so alienated that they spend their nights gambling with their lives alongside a chained animal.
The clothing they wear, the knee breeches, the lace-trimmed dresses, the court uniforms, belongs to the year 1805, but the psychological mechanisms driving these characters are intensely, uncomfortably modern.
The fundamental human behaviors haven't shifted at all. Princess Drubetskaya, using guilt, tears, and past favors to secure a position for her son, is a networking tactic you could witness in any corporate environment today.
And Pierre blurting out deeply controversial political opinions at a formal dinner party because he hasn't learned to read the room is a timeless social disaster.
And Pierre sitting in the carriage, using the possibility of an unpredictable future to rationalize breaking a promise he made to himself just minutes earlier. I mean, that is the universal architecture of self-sabotage.
Tolstoy shows us that the machinery of society demands conformity. It demands that you play your part, whether that part is the enthusiastic hostess, the calculating power broker, or the beautiful silent ornament.
And the moment you step out of that role, the system either tries to crush you or you are forced to seek escape in destructive extremes.
It's so true.
So, as we wrap up this deep dive into the Clockwork of 1805 St. Petersburg, I want to leave you with a question to chew on regarding your own life. Think about the daily script you follow, the social circles you navigate, and the professional masks you wear. When those rigid rules are temporarily stripped away, who are you underneath?
Are you the calculated Prince Vasily, meticulously hoarding favors and judging the return on investment of every relationship?
Are you the trapped Prince Andrew, possessing everything society says you should want, but desperately looking for an escape hatch from an empty routine? Or are you Pierre, brimming with good intentions, searching for meaning, making grand promises to improve yourself, but ultimately, when the night falls, just looking for the party with the bear?
Think about what your own rebellion against the machinery looks like. Are you maintaining the gears of the system around you, or are you the grain of sand?
The next time you find yourself in a crowded room, playing your designated part, just remember the immense, fragile complexity of the human clockwork spinning around you. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the world of Tolstoy. We will see you next time.